Malawi from the Maravi Empire to President Banda. The region of present-day Malawi was originally inhabited by the relatives of the Khoisan who migrated from the Kalahari Desert. By the 15th century, the area was ruled by the Maravi. By the late 18th and early 19th century, the Maravi Empire was in decline and was eventually invaded by the Ngoni and Yao people. When David Livingstone arrived in this area in 1859, he actively promoted British interests and paved the way for the colonization of present-day Malawi. As a result of David Livingstone's work, Malawi became the British Central African Protectorate in 1891. When the British arrived, they established plantations on the most fertile pieces of land. In order to increase the number of Africans willing to work on these plantations, the British government imposed taxes on the locals. In 1912, the North Nyasa Native Association was established, and thereafter many more organizations were formed to resist the brutal colonial government, including the Nyasaland African Congress, NAC. The NAC became very active when they opposed the Federation of Nyasaland, Northern and Southern Rhodesia. Dr. Hastings Banda was invited to lead the organization. He used his oratory skills to influence Africans against the colonial government. The many protests against the colonial government led to the arrest of NAC officials, but eventually forced the government to come to the table. After the talks, Banda, as leader of the Malawi Congress Party MCP, won the election of August 1961. By 1963, the federation had been dissolved and Malawi was granted independence in 1964. Members of Malawi's Congress Party did not readily agree on the way forward, and Banda began to purge those he viewed as radical members. In February 1965, Malawi became a republic and Banda its president, with MCP as the sole political party. By 1970, Banda was granted power to be president for life. As president for life, he had immense power and controlled government and the way of life of most Malawians. President Banda had the power to decide who could be a parliamentarian, who could own a business, who could own land, and the ability to overturn any court verdicts that he did not like. President Banda can be described as a coon who pandered to the West and was not concerned about the independence of Zimbabwe and South Africa. He refused to support the liberation movements of Mozambique and Rhodesia, now Zimbabwe. What's worse is not just that he refused to support liberation for fellow Africans, but he even pandered to Portugal and the apartheid South Africa government. Malawi was the only African country to recognize and trade with the apartheid South Africa government. He was actively involved in supporting the Rhodesian and apartheid South Africa, and even supported the MNR rebels in Mozambique. By 1991, more opposition parties were formed, including the People's Liberation Army of Malawi, PLAM, and the United Front for Multi-Party Democracy. However, Banda requested debate in the parliament he controlled, and predictably, they voted to continue one-party rule. On March 8, 1992, Catholic clergy denounced the country's human rights record and protested, but 6 bishops were arrested. Other organizations also protested in various ways, including the United Democratic Party, UDP, the Labour Movement, Alliance for Democracy, AFORD, and the United Democratic Front, UDF. President Banda announced a referendum on multi-party democracy, and the referendum took place on June 14, 1993. The people of Malawi overwhelmingly voted for change, and multi-party elections were held in May 1994. That election was won by Bakili Muluzi of the UDF, United Democratic Front.